So a time came and I told her, hey, my friend, unajua, you know I'm growing older. Na hii baridi italikuja kunimaliza siku moja. Na you are my friend and you know where I've been. Hakuna mtu anaweza kunikeep warm. Joking like friends. You know, as ladies you can crack such jokes. And she was told me, yeah, I've got a friend who is my in-law. The wife died in a road accident and he has got 2 daughters. I told him, well, that's good because I also have boys and he has girls. 1, 2, 3 can make up something. And you see, we don't have to produce other kids because there I am now. I'm old enough. I can just maybe give him some water and companionship and you see our kids grow.
Yes.
Because I could not imagine that my friend can con me until at my prime age, I'm being put in prison. I had never been to prison myself. I could go see people, yes. But mimi kwenda kukapa nitoe kiatu moja nikae pale.
Tuko family, welcome to this episode of My Story. Now imagine this, you have a friend who knows you in and out. You find yourself in a situation and they know whatever length you can go to get what you want. So they take advantage of this situation and in the process, they swindle you millions of shillings. How did it unravel? Let's listen to our guest today, Noel, to understand much more. My name is Kingori Wangeshi, come with me.
My full names are Noel Akivembe. I'm a Kenyan. I'm a Chua lady. Yes.
And how about your family?
I've got 2 grown-up boys and a small girl who is in grade 7. Yes.
Mother of 3.
I'm a mother of 3.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what do you do for a living?
Professionally, I'm an administrator, office administrator. And I do so many things. I hustle. Najituma. So currently, I'm into food vendoring. That's what is putting food on my table.
Wow.
Yeah.
You make food to
feed people. Yeah.
Thank you. How did you grow up? Because I think it is a good place to start this story.
I grew up well in a family of 5, mother and father, although they're all late. Yeah, they're all late. My brothers are okay. They have settled their families and they're doing well. Thank you.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up partly in Western Kenya and Nairobi.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, we are here because, I don't want to say betrayal because I don't want to label, but something happened between you and your friend.
Yes, it did.
Yes. What happened?
Well, this friend of mine, we grew up together. We used to go to church together. We did all the funny things together as girls. Even all our friends, we knew each other very, very well. So sometimes we parted because maybe I was into my different ways of life and she was doing her own things in Nairobi. So we were in communication and there was a time I had to invite her when I was in South Sudan and she came. In South Sudan, I was working with an NGO that time and I brought her because I was opening a salon. So I brought her because she's also a salonist. She does some business of salon. So I told her, hey, I've opened something in Juba. Please come and at least see the way I can carry on. So she came, she met my staff and she told them what to do. And from there we continued to communicate, me and her. So when she came back, the communication went dead a little bit. So for me, I continued serving my contract in South Sudan. The contract got finished. I came back to the country. We didn't get in touch.
When you left Juba, did you close down that business?
We sold it to a Sudanese because the contract was over. And you see, you cannot run a business when you're out of a country. It's very difficult. Even if you got all the control mechanism, you can't. Yeah. And it was a salon and you must be there to know how the items are going, how the chemicals are being used. And you see, I'm in Kenya and Juba, we could not manage. Because by that time, my partner was a Ugandan. So we contract got finished the same time and we all got separated. He went to his country and I also came to my country. So, but before we left Juba, we had to close down. We had to sell the salon to the Sudanese to continue running it, which is still there up to now. Wow. Nasikianga sifa your salon. It had a very good name. It was called Talking Heads. And I think the Talking Heads are still talking in Juba.
Are still talking.
My friend is the one who gave me the hint and talked to my staff members. of how to run the place. So that was a good thing, and because I trusted her so much. So after she left Juba, I connected her. She came back to the country. I continued serving my contract in Juba. So when the contract got finished, I came back to the country. When I came to the country, I worked at the World Bank shortly. I went to Nutrition International shortly. And then now I just came to be a business person. So by the time I was now doing my business in Nairobi, I knocked into my friend along Ambassador.
Just happened to meet.
Yeah, but then she didn't recognize me, because for me, I was not even thinking about it. I was just from office. I was going to board a double M to go to my place in Buruburu. Then she saw my haircut. I think she was used to my haircut. So she called me, "Hey, your haircut cannot let me down. How are you, Noel?" And we exchanged our numbers because I had lost her contact. So she took my number, I took her number, and we continued communicating. And then one day she told me, "Come and see my salon in Outer Ring." So I went, she made my nails, she dyed my hair, and then the friendship started there again. So a time came and I told her, "Hey, my friend, unajua, I'm growing older. Na hii baridi italikuja kunimaliza siku moja. Na you are my friend, and you know where I've been. Hakuna mtu anaweza kunikeep warm." Joking like friends. As ladies, you can crack such jokes. And she told me, "Yeah, I've got a friend who is my in-law. The wife died in a road accident and he has got 2 daughters." I told him, "Well, that's good, because I also have boys and he has girls. 1, 2, 3 can make up something." And you see, we don't have to produce other kids, because there I am now. I'm old enough. I can just maybe give him some water and companionship, and you see our kids grow.
Yes.
So that's how we finished. And then she gave me a number. Akaniambia, "Hii nambari kaa nayo, mtafute, maybe mnaweza link up na yeye." So mimi nikaenda karudi kwangu Buruburu, nikamwacha kwa saloni yake. So after that, after some time, that was in April, around June of the same year, nikajaribu hiyo namba. Nione kama ataichukua. Hiyo namba ilikuwa inalia mteja. So nikarudia rafiki yangu, nikamwambia, "Ile nambari haiendi through." So akaniambia, nitakwambia, nitakupa namba nyingine. So that was June. July tukanyamaziana. I was busy doing my things in town. And then around August 5th, 2021, akanipigia akaniambia, ile namba ndio hii, amenipatia namba nyingine, lakini hayuko Kenya, alikuwa ameenda Singapore. Alikuwa ametuma kazini kule. Lakini kule Singapore kumba alikuwa amepatwa na COVID, alikuwa kwa naitonga nini ile mashini ya kupumua,
ventilator.
Ndio kwa sababu mbavu zake zilikuwa zimeumia sana. Nikamwambia, haki pole. Mimi nikamwambia kipole, wacha tuombe atapata nafuu, arudi wapi? Arudi Kenya. Tukamaliza na hivyo. So akaniambia vile alikuwa kwa hospitali, sasa amekuwa discharged, lakini bili imeenda juu. Mimi nikamuuliza, kwani kampuni ilimpeleka haina medical cover? Akaniambia exhaust medical cover. Na hata huyo jamaa mwenye nitakana connectiwa naye akaniambia, tulichat na hiyo 5th by the way. Akanitumia picha yake, akaniambia huyu rafiki yangu mwanamke ni in-law yake na namwamini sana. Ana trust yeye 100%. Ha trust mtu mwingine kwa jamii isipokuwa nani? Huyo rafiki yangu. Hata akaniambia vile alikuwa amesafiri, huyu rafiki yangu mwanamke ndio amechunga watoto wake, ataka wa transfer akawapeleka kwenye watoto wake wanasoma.
Lakini at this point, you did not ask your friend whether she had been doing that. She had been taking care of the children of this man.
Hakuwa ameniambia bado. So after that tukaongea, ndio baadaye nikaanza kuomba pesa. Akaniambia naona nimekuwa hospitali na nimepatikana hiyo COVID, lakini sasa nimeambiwa naweza kuwa usafiri nyumbani, lakini medical imekuwa juu sana. So nataka msaidiane na yeye, kwa sababu mimi nitakuja nyumbani na utakuwa wangu. Unaona? So mimi nikamwambia, nitajaribu kwenye nitaweza, kwenye nitashindwa nitakwambia siwezi. So akaniambia uta get in touch na yule rafiki yangu, yeye ndio ako na my financial, yeye ndio ako na njia ya kunitumia pesa. Sasa mimi nikamwambia ni sawa. So transaction yangu ya kwanza kwa yule rafiki yangu wa kike ilikuwa 20,000. Nikamwambia for now naweza manage 20,000 peke yake, acha nimtumie ndio aongezea kutumie. So ikakuwa ananifuatilia, umetuma, nikamwambia nimeshamtumia, acha ashughulike. Then after some time akaniambia, nimeshalipa, nimetoka hospitali, acha niende nilale, tutaongea kesho before niende wapi airport. Lazima niende nipate clearance certificate kwa MOH ya wapi ya Singapore. So kufika
sorry, you are chatting.
You're just chatting.
On call.
Chatting and voice notes. Chatting and voice notes. And exactly is a man. So when angeniambia kitu mimi na confirm na nani, na msichana rafiki yangu. Msichana wangu akasema ni kweli. Hata ile after nimetuma send, msichana kaniambia nakimbia kwenda kumwekea wapi kwa simu yake through PayPal. Nimeenda bank, that was around 4. Akaniambia nikimbie before bank zifunge, ni convert pesa ndio nimtumie kwa PayPal. Mimi nikakuwa mjinga nikaamini tu, rafiki yangu hawezi nidanganya. 20,000, mara natuma 60, natuma 50, hivyo tu. So tukamazana na huyu jamaa anataka apande gari. Akuje wapi? Akuje Kenya. Alikuwa amepatiwa ticket ya Qatar Airways nakumbuka.
Sorry, what was this amount for that you are sending?
That amounts were for the 20,000 was to clear his medical bill. I was topping up ndio clear medical bill. Alafu hii 50 alikuwa anataka napate clearance ya COVID certificate ili aboard ndege, which was a real thing by that time. Those of us who were traveling, you could not board a flight ama ungekuwa cleared kwenda kuboard kama una certificate ya medical. And since he was a foreigner in Singapore, lazima apate na hiyo clearance. Mimi roho yangu ilikuwa nisaidie jamaa kuje Kenya tukutane, anipe sent rudishe. Mimi ndiko nimespend yote tanirudisha nilipe. Waona? So tukaendelea hivyo, jamaa kaniambia nimeboard ndege sasa naenda Qatar. I'll be off for 3 hours. Okay? Mimi nikarelax nikasema jamaa kwa hewa nakuja. Haya. Alikuwa mpana ndege yake ilikuwa around 5 or 6 in the evening. Siwezi kumbuka ma timing, lakini he was meant to be in Qatar by around 10 p.m. Ndio aboard ile ndege ya 1:30 kuja Kenya. Kuna ndege na kujanga 1:30, nafika hapa kitu saa 11 asubuhi. Haya, sasa akaniambia, so tukaenda off. Akaniambia nimepanda ndege sasa, we are taking off. Nikamwambia it's okay, have a safe flight. So mimi nikarelax tu. At around after the 3 hours akanitumia, akaniambia tumefika Qatar, lakini while we were in the air a passenger passed on. Okay? Wakiwa kule juu passenger alipass on kwa sababu ya COVID. Sasa vile Qatar ilipitia Qatar, all the persons on board they were meant to go for COVID check-up. Kwa sababu ule mmoja amekufia kwa ndege, hawezi release mtu a connect kuja kwenye nataka na kwenda mpaka watu waendie the medical check-up ya nini? Ya COVID. Mimi nikasema that's a routine. Because you know sometimes napelekanga watu kwa kusafiri, so I know the routine of flying. And I've also been a frequent flyer, so I know that. So mimi nikamwambia it's okay, it's a routine now that you're having COVID all over the world, let you go for the test. Haya, sakaenda hiyo test. After some time akaniambia impatikana COVID yaisha kwa system. Okay? So the Qatar government wamesema I cannot connect to Kenya. You understand?
Yes.
And Matthew, hii mambo tunaongea kaniambia kwanza yeye ni diabetic na kuna high blood pressure. Unasikia? So COVID combined with high blood pressure, you know what, and diabetes, you know what can happen. So they used that, I think, to confuse me more and maybe took advantage of my soft heart, I don't know. So after that akaniambia I've been found to be positive, I cannot proceed to Kenya. I've been told to go and be admitted. So that's where the money started flowing also. Mala he wants 35,000, he wants I don't know what, the pressure is up, the sugar is up, blah, 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 blah. So all this time, it was me and this lady friend of mine. Because they could tell me, the lady tells me, that tutafanya nini, amesema blah, 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 blah. And since I had an open heart, sikufikiria anything was, I didn't think of anything fishy. Mine was just tusaidia mwenzetu aje Kenya, anaweza kuwa pengine anaweza kunipatia mahali, anaweza kunipatia warmth kidogo, wanielewa. Haya. Sisi tukaendelea hivyo, I get 35 natuma, napata 50 natuma, so akapata admitted. Kula admitted akaniambia sijui lungs zilikuwa na nini, hawezi pumua vizuri, he has to undergo the proper medication of Qatar, ndio hizo lungs zisikuwe na zile maji. And all this was money, and all money was going through my friend. Because it was only one line I was given, and it was my friend's line. So I didn't convert, I didn't send him money directly. I sent money through my friend who was his trustee. So mimi nilikuwa natuma, kafika mara wakaniambia akona clot.
Noel, these were so many medical issues. They didn't raise your eyebrows.
you see, because when you are into something 100%, nothing can make you think otherwise. Because I had already spent all the way from Singapore. And my intention was, my intention with my friend's request was tumsaidia aje Kenya, hizi pesa akifika airport tarudishiwa. Naona? So singevunja hiyo ahadi in between. So my intention was, let me push on. Ndio jamaa pate matibabu akuje Kenya. Diabetic is not a killer disease if well managed. Even blood pressure. People are living with all these things. Okay? So for me, I was hoping that huyu jamaa atakuja. Akishafika Kenya, zile senti zote nimemtumia kwa sababu nilikuwa niko na statement yangu. So nilikuwa na matumaini kuwa akikuja mimi nitatoa statement yangu, nimwambie ile pesa nimetumia yote kutoka kwangu ndio hii. So ningelipenda huyu rafiki yangu wa kike aconfirm kuwa ndio nilipata hizi senti, turudishie nani huyu dada pesa yake. So tukaendelea hivyo, akasema lazima aende medical, akakuwa admitted. Hata akanipigia picha kama kwa kwenye wodi na daktari anaenda around. The Qatari doctor was going round. So from there, ukiona mtu ako kwenye kitanda na kuambia nimesikia hivi na hivi, ndio daktari bla bla, vitu kama hizo, ile mtisha wako kumsaidia unaendelea yani unakuwa na hiyo mtisha kumsaidia ndio apate nafuu. Wanielewa? So kwenye alianza ikafika mahali akasema ati imepatikana kwako na clot kwa kichwa na pia kwa lungs. And the doctor is saying it's very very bad, itolewe ndio survive. Naona? That's the time I brought in my family members and a friend of the family member. And I remember my brother, one of my brothers, I'll not mention him, akanitumia, kwanza it was 80, akanitumia 80 mara mbili. Then the friend came in and sent me some 240,000, that I sent me 170, vitu kama hizo. Na before ndugu yangu sasa aanze kunitumia hizi senti, niliwa connect. Nakatumia ndugu yangu ujumbe. Naelewa. Na hata huyu msichana aliongea na ndugu yangu. Kwa sababu ni mtu anajulikana jamii. Si mtu wa mbali. So sisema ni mtu wa Uganda ama ni mtu wa wapi. Ako hapa Kenya na alijua ndugu zangu wote. Anajua nyumbani vizuri. So nikamwambia ndugu yangu, huyu jamaa nataka kwa rafiki yangu, atakuwa my hubby na ndio wa nani? Huyu rafiki yangu msichana. Si mnamuelewa vizuri. Sasa ndugu yangu alikuwa na ile confidence. Acha nisaidie dada yangu ndio atakayekuwa mpenzi wake aje nchini, mambo yatakuwa sawa. Ndugu yangu na roho yake safi pia akaconduct rafiki yake mmoja. Huyu rafiki alituma almost nikipiga hesabu vizuri is heading to 800,000. Ndugu yangu yake kupata kwa sababu ya kuzaana is almost 500,000. Unaona? Hiyo ni mambo ya familia tu. Zote zikatuma huyu jamaa wa Qatari.
And you're sending to this lady?
This lady. Grandmother yake akakufa. Alikuwa na kanza. Na yeye ndiye alikuanga the provider. Sasa vile mama alikosa mamaka alikosa medication, ikabidi hospitali wangezalipa. Kwa sababu huyu rafiki yangu wa kike ndiye alikuwa anashughulikia huyu mama. Kwa sababu lack of money, mama akakata roho. Hiyo pia alipoambiwa kwa family group, jamaa akashtuka, pressure ndio ikapanda. Akapelekwa hospitali tena. So vile pressure rudi chini, so he was meant to travel home. Akakuja airport, hakuna kila kitu, nikatumiwa ticket ya kuja airport ndio connect Kenya. Before kuja nyumbani, authorities walikuwa wanatembea wakasema yeye hana makaratasi na amekuwa overstay wapi? Qatar. He is illegally in Qatar. Nikamwambia sawa, so uambie kuwa wewe kuantakana kwa Qatar you are on a transit flight. Unfortunately 1 2 3 happened. Akaniambia wanajua, lakini wanasema I was meant to inform the authorities. Nikamwambia si uambie ulikuwa ICU, ulikuwa kwa oxygen. How could you talk and you are sick? Kaniambia watu waelewi. Akapelekwa ilikuwa wakashikwa. Akapelekwa migration court. Kule pia kapiga fine. So hii fine yote it was coming to around 5,000 Qatari riyals. So hiyo it was about ukipiga na kwa about that time the dollar was a bit, it was 37, tulikuwa tunapiga na 38. So hiyo pesa mimi ndo nililipa. Niliongea na ndugu zangu na rafiki yake ile pesa kuzaana. Wanielewa? Ndugu huyu kijana kanitumia, mimi nikatumia rafiki yangu kwa simu yake, akampatia akatoka migration. Sasa akarudi hospitali akamwambia lungs ziko sawa, now he can board. So kufika airport akaniambia nini nimefanyika, hawezi board. Hata pepa zake zime expire. Sasa kufika hapo ndio akapelekwa Tena akarudishwa kwenda kwa migration ya airport sasa mpaka papers zake zikuwe cleared. Hiyo ni Qatar bado. So akiwa migration Qatar, sijui airport, sijui ticket ilikuwa ticket ya wapi. Sasa hivi nilijaribu kufuatilia kwa sababu ilifika mahali akaenda dead. Sasa mimi nikafikiria pengine amefanywa nini, something has happened. So nikajaribu kupiga hiyo kwa hiyo airport, hiyo ticket kulikuwa na namba. Kupiga hiyo namba wananiambia hawamjui. Nikasema hii ticket mmeissue ni ya mtu fulani. Huyo jamaa wa ticket kaniambia hii siwezi kukujibu hiyo kwa sasa. Hapo ndo nilianza kuwa na wasiwasi. And then in the morning at around 6, so he was meant to fly night. He was meant to be landing in Kenya at 6. So mimi na expect mtu wa land Kenya ndiye anipigie, niko airport. I was in Buruburu by that time. Mimi niko airport, can you organize for pickup? Napigwa naambiwa jamaa alipata kama amecollapse kwa airport ya wapi? Ya Qatar. Napigwa na one of the people kuchunga hiyo officers wa airport. Kaniambia we checked his phone and we saw my wife. That's why we are calling you. Wakanipigia na simu yao jamaa. Mimi nikasema sasa kama collapse ame survive ame dead. I asked the person who was calling me, akaniambia he's still breathing but he needs to be rushed to hospital.
And that was a WhatsApp?
Also WhatsApp call. That was in December.
And you saw the number was from?
The number was his. No, the number was...
Oh, the number was his?
Yeah, the number that my friend used to connect money to. Okay, the Kenyan number. No, as long as you have Wi-Fi, you can contact to your number. Aya. So huyo jamaa huyo officer kaniambia tumpeleke hospitali gani? Tuko Qatar. Do you know Qatar very well? Nikamwambia yeah, I know Qatar very well. What you do, mpeleke Ahmed International Hospital. That's it's like our Kenyatta Hospital in Kenya. So akaniambia so nampeleka wapi? Huko. He told me we are looking for an ambulance, we shall take him there. So kampeleka. Kufika usiku akaniambia amepata, nilianguka tu kidogo, pressure ilikuwa juu na nilikuwa nimesikia njaa. So amenipatia kile kitu naelekea, anaendelea vizuri, but now my permit has expired. Also my ticket has to be changed. This time my lady friend told me the ticket the husband will take care. The husband has got somebody who can issue a ticket. So then nikasema that's good. So after treatment tukatuma pesa, could send 10, 20, 30, 10, 5 hivyo. Saka kwa discharged now from that hospital. Nikamwambia the best thing before you get discharged, debu ongea na watu wa embassy wajue uko Qatar. Akaniambia watu wa embassy ni watu wabaya sana. I wish I had my phone. There's a conversation I had even gone to the extent of knowing who is the link of Kenyans in Qatar. I even talked to him. So I gave this person his name. And this where now likely anza kufunguka, could ask for his passport number. I asked for my friend here ID yake, so nipe ID yake, mimi kutusaidia atiana ID yake. Sasa story hapo ndo nikaanza kuchanuka, sasa nini ni mbaya inafanyika. Nikasema wakati nijitolea kumsaidia kuja Kenya, let me not have other thoughts. So what I've spent is a big amount of money and it has to be refunded back to me. So wakafika airport, watu wa airport wakamwambia hawezi kwenda, akona overstay ya Qatar. Kwa nini kwenda ku renew permit yake? Akamwambia nilikuwa mgonjwa. Akanikuwa ananiambia niwaambie mimi nilikuwa mgonjwa lakini hataka kunisikiza. Akakaa hapo airport. I used to buy meals. I could send money through my friend for him to get meals. You know, diabetic person ataka nikukaa na njaa. Sawa.
You are very caring.
That's my mentality.
Very caring.
So tukaendelea hivyo, baadaye akasema ati nikamwambia anyway, let me go through our diaspora wakusaidie. When I could talk of diaspora, angesema ana resist. Kaambia hapana, I normally have some clients who normally come there and blah blah, this happens, let me conduct. So ikakuja time nikapata mtu wa immigration wa wapi, wa Qatar. Wakaniambia ndio jamaa kwa hapa. You see? I don't know how they used to confuse. Because for me, like the time I was in Qatar, I was told he's in Qatar. But now the Kenyan guy was Moria. Akaniambia wewe unachezwa. Huyu jamaa yuko Qatar. Nikamwambia but I've just talked to him. He's at Hamid Hospital. Please go. Jamaa akasema you are doing it but I'm doubting. Go to you, ebu soma story vizuri uendelee. Mtu mmoja hawezi kuwa na hiyo mashida zote. Sasa mimi nikasema huyu jamaa sinivunje moyo. Mimi roho yangu tu kusaidia ikakuwa tu kwa huyu jamaa tu. Sababu amekuwa kama ni rafiki yangu, siwezi change mind. Mimi niko too closed. I'm expecting somebody from to come. Tukaendelea hivyo, hata akasema hawezi fly, amepelekwa kwa jela ya immigration airport. So akiwa kule kwenye airport, that was December still. Vile alileta kichwa, hata alikuwa kichwa ngumu, akamrusha ndani ya cell ya immigration airport. Then in the immigration of cells airport, akapigiwa simu dota yake amekufa. Kwa sababu my lady told me the guys akona daughters wawili. So when huyu rafiki yangu wa kiume alisikia msichana wake ameaga, the pressure shot na kango, he was put on the double deck. So from the double deck akaanguka, kainja spine. Nasikia? So vile alinja his spine, the Qatar medical team could not treat his spinal injury. So he had to be flown on emergency to where? To India. He was given an emergency traveling document from Qatar to India. Okay? So we have left Qatar. We are now in India.
Going to India.
So in India he was received. He left Qatar at around 3 a.m. He arrived in India. The medical in India. Even akantumia jina ya hospitali iko kwa ile simu nyingine. So kule wakamshughulikia, akakuwa operated vizuri. No, India is good for medication. So jamaa akaoperatiwa, mgongo ikakuwa mzuri, akuchungu ikaisha. So akakaa hospitali. Ikafika time he was now told, you are now to be discharged. This is the time I came and borrowed my friends here, who gave me 300,000. Okay? So mimi ndio huyo nikakimbia nikatuma zile senti kwa rafiki yangu wa kike. Ndio alipia jamaa kuja Kenya haraka. Kwa sababu the time of returning this money was, I told my friend I'll give you the money when the person lands in 2 days. Because I knew from India hizi chukua siku mingi. Naona. So mimi nikakonvince marafiki zangu, walikuwa ni marafiki wangu wazuri. Hii pesa ndio imefanya tumekuwa apart. Lakini hawakuwa na shida, sina shida nao. Sijawabeba vibaya. Ilikuwa haki yao nirudishie pesa. Naona. So mimi nilikuwa na high hopes. Nikishatuma hizi senti, jamaa atapanda ndege aje Kenya, na hata before aende kwao atafanya nini? Atanipa senti rudishia marafiki zangu pesa zao. So mimi nika struggle, nikakuja nikaomba marafiki pesa. Mimi natumia tu rafiki yangu wa kike pesa kwa simu yake tu. Mimi nikiamini kwa anashughulikia jamaa aje arudishe pesa nipe marafiki zangu. Siku 2 zikaisha. Siku ya 3, siku ya 4. So siku ya 4 nikaambiwa jamaa after ametoka migration ndio apande gari aende airport, akapelekana wakoro wakampiga.
In India now.
In India now. So nikatumia picha nyingine ati yako kwa emergency hospital next to the airport of India. So he needs to be treated kidogo before he's allowed to board. Unanielewa? So that was in I took this money in February 2022. So mimi nikamwambia ni sawa, tutashughulika ya kuja Kenya. By that time macho yangu hajafunguka hata kidogo. Still blinded with the issue of somebody is coming. Tutafunga ndoa, tutakuwa na mtu ndaitwa Mrs. Aya. Si mimi naomba tu pesa, mimi natuma. Ananiambia hii mimi natuma tu. So come February akaniambia that was around January 17th. Akaniambia nimesikia vizuri na I can board. So I think I don't know what happened again. Akaboard, kufika Qatar wakamwambia hawezi kuja paka Kenya. I think there was something with the traveling issue. Sijui kwa amekilia, there was no clearance between how he went to India and why he's coming via why he can come to Qatar ndio asafiri nyumbani. So hapo ndio kizungumkuti ilikuwa. That time that was now heading to March. So I was meant to refund this money within February. The money I had borrowed from my 2 friends.
Yes.
Is now heading to March. My friends were calling me, naambia nakuja. I was now in Nairobi. Naambia nakuja, jamaa hajakuja lakini ako jana nakuja. So now I'd like towards to tell my friends, because I was feeling I'm hurting my friends. And no money is something that has to be used. And I feel bad because one of my friends, the money was meant for a construction. She was just starting her foundation. But because of the love she had for me, she had to give me part of that money for her construction for me to save this person. So when I didn't have an answer. I was being told that now he's been cleared to fly and he needs around 150. This is one of the ladies who gave me the money. I had to call her and told her, well, this gentleman is hard up, he went to hospital, blah, blah. Now we only need 150 apande ndege akuje. Can I come, you give me, I sign again, so that when he comes, I'll give you 300 plus 150. So I think they had already reported me to the securities. So because I was so eager for this guy to come, this lady told me, come. the money is here but I cannot give you on phone, you have to come and sign for it. So mimi na sijui ni kuamini ama kuwa mjinga, mimi nika bodyguard kutoka Nairobi nikakuja. Nilishikiwa kwake. That was on March 29th. So kumbe alikuwa ameshaniripoti, nikashikwa nikapelekwa hapa Nakuru Central Police. Wakaniambia mimi ni con woman na nimewanyang'anya pesa zao. Niwaambia utawalipa after 2 days, imeenda into a month. So mimi nika explain, nikaandika statement. Nikapelekwa ndani. Kufika ndani, I didn't want to involve people to come and give me cash bail because I was feeling guilty. And still that time I'm in cell, I'm still believing that this guy is coming. Sijaamini kuwa something fishy has happened. Because for me, my mind was so focused and open. I didn't think of anything could come in between that nilikuwa nakoniwa. Unaona? Mimi nikakaa hapo Central Police for 14 days. Bado wakifanya uchunguzi. Yeye akafanya uchunguzi akasema hii kesi ya Noel haiwezi fanya nini? Haiwezi kisha saizi acha peleke remand aende kotini. Kwa sababu my friends were demanding for money that minute. And by the way, I was just now confused. My mind was not thinking. Because I could not imagine that my friend can con me until at my prime age, I'm being put in prison. I had never been to prison myself. I could go see people, yes. But mimi kwenda kukapa nitoe kiatu moja nikae pale.
Never.
So I had to play it cool. Because I was looking at my boys, looking at my girl. So I had to be strong. Ile crocodile. Yani unakuwa strong lakini ndani yako unauoga fulani. Haya nikapelekwa remand. Kupelekwa remand nikakaa kule 1 month, 2 weeks. So out of nowhere I was out on bond.
And when you were there, were you in communication with your friend?
Whenever I could get access to a phone, I could call her. Namwambia, ni aje, jamaa amefika. By the way, here I'm dying. Where's people's money? When you get this money, just come to Nakuru, go to Central Police. They'll call me and I'll come and clear these people's money. Hajakuja, hataongei. Baadaye nikasikia alipelekwa Indian Police bila kuwa na makaratasi. And Indian Police, they said they cannot release him until he pays a sum of money, some huge sum of money. So that time when I told him I don't have any other money, so unless he's going to be jailed in Indian court, in Indian cells, I don't know. But for now, I'm sorry. I'm meant to pay people's money. So from here now, I carry up my hands. That I'm still up there.
Yes.
So my boys worked out something, and I was removed. I came out. So when I came out, now this story of the connection of this gentleman I've shown you, now started opening up my mind. And then this is the time I looked for the number of the other guy who is in Kenya, whom I was told is the twin brother. Okay? I was able to contact this gentleman, and the gentleman told me he only knew my friend because this friend of mine did some work for him. And even send me a confirmation of money he had sent my friend. That beyond that, and I asked him, I'm told you've got a twin brother. Is it true you got a twin brother? I don't have any twin brother. So from there, I said, let me not go ahead with him because I cannot know what happened. So this is the time I went to Central Police and now put up a case. This lady friend of mine whose money was going to his account so that we could find out the truth. So I went there, I wrote my statement, and it was from September 2022. And you were not able, his phone, he could not pick my phone. If I could call him the different number, he could not pick. Even the officer who was handling the case could call her and she could not pick the phone. So that I reported the case in September 2022. So the whole of September 2022, she was not able to be found. The whole of 2023, we could not be able to catch her. So it was in May 2024, the time we were able to get hold of her. And she's now, the case is now in court. Yes.
So at what point did you now realize, wait, all this money I've been sending to my friend, thinking I'm sending to a guy to come and get married?
I noticed it because when I could now communicate, after leaving the remand, I came. The gentleman sent me a text. Kaniambia, Your lady friend has left me, even you've left me. So I don't know where I am. I'm just confused in the Indian cells. I still have that message. So from there, I got shocked. The time I could find out to my lady's friend, the phones were not going through. Even on WhatsApp, she had blocked me. I could not get to her at all. The only time I communicated to her is when we had now picked her. Then she was sending me a text Sunday morning, telling me that I should let her go and look for money for me and give me back the money. Then after that, the phone again went off. The WhatsApp between me and her, we cannot communicate. Yeah.
And then how did you realize that it is just her? There was no man involved here.
Now my mind started opening. I had heard of stories of somebody impersonating herself.
Impersonating someone.
So I started thinking maybe my friend was doing that. Maybe she has got people, because there's no way you can talk like a man and talk like a lady. So maybe there's a team, because even the children of this gentleman, they could talk to me and tell me, Auntie, how are you? We have left school, blah, 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 blah. Auntie, we are hungry. And my auntie doesn't have money. So me, from my little earnings, imagine you could share, even after the sale, after remand. From this business I'm doing, I could collect money in the evening after getting the stock for the next day. The remaining could divide with her and send her. That's on the statement. You could see there's 100, there's 2,000, there's 1,000, there's 60. Because I was told in where they were staying, so there's no water. So there's no clean water to drink. So I could imagine, how can these kids drink that water? Won't they be sick? So she could even ask me for 60 bob to buy water. And Noel, who is stupid, could send that money to her. So on my statement, me to her, you could even see 100 shillings, 60, 50, 200.
All in the name of love.
That's how stupid I was.
You're not stupid, you're in love, blindly in love.
But how could a friend call me like that? A friend I trusted. If she wanted money, we could have put our brains together to look for that money than using other ways to get money from, which is not all my money. Mine is very little. Most of the money you can see on that statement is from my friends and my family members. Very little is mine. Very little. And I thank all the friends that helped me. But I'm sorry, I never knew I was being conned. And for my brother and his friend, do not I'll ever pay you.
You sent out money to your friend.
Yes.
To help that man.
Yes.
In his medical issues, journey, arrests and all that. So that when he lands, he reimburses you the money.
Yes.
Why couldn't he use the money that he was to reimburse or refund with, to you to sort out his issues out there?
It did accept my mind. So when he was held up in Qatar, and he needed, they asked him why he found himself in Singapore and why he's in Qatar. So his employer was meant to send a letter. And all through I was told he's working with Plan International Kisumu. Stupidly, I dialed that number and I got a very rude response from Kisumu International Plan International. So he told me that they had a loggerhead with the managing director of Plan International Kisumu branch. Okay? So this manager of his wrote a very bad letter and denied knowing his travel to Singapore. So that chapter was closed. I said, let me not go into much, because they normally say, ukitaka jamaa, you don't ask so many questions. Some of them, utajifunza mkiwa na yeye. Naona. So there I closed my mouth. Now the issue of money. My friend, the lady friend, and himself made me understand that they had money in, which bank is this? I was told that his bank is not recognized where he is. And there's no way he can get money through mobile banking to himself. Okay? The next of kin was the grandmother who was passed on. Okay? And the kids are still minors. By that time, it was 17 and 16, the girls, as far as I was being told. So there's nothing the bank can do until this guy can write, can cover attorney of what? Can have a message from the Attorney General in that country where he is to authorize the Kenyan bank to give authority to this lady to operate his account, which was not possible.
And you're telling us in this entire episode, there was not a single man involved. Like, there was no man to come to you.
That one never came to me. It just came to me the other day. Yeah. For me, I believed the in-law. How can you tell me you've got an in-law who is not available? And all the voice notes, all the voice calls, they were for a man.
So now, whom do you suspect this man was? You have never talked to them on a video call because he was abroad.
But there was something funny. Only WhatsApp and voice notes. There's a time when he was in India, he told me that he's looking like a bushman. And I told him, why can't you send me a picture I see? There you are looking bushy. See mimi ni wako. The way I'm looking, I cannot be able to send you any picture. And Kambia, no, don't mind. You send me the picture. It's going to be a good memory one day. And one day, when you're in India, you look like this. He didn't send. But he was asking for money to go and shave himself. Kambia, before you cut your hair, hebu nitumie picha nione. Kaniambia, the one I send you, that's how I look like. Now the one I'm telling you. Even on that time, even on my profile, I'd put that picture. Yeah. The one I've shown you.
Hold it right there. Because
that one. On my profile. I'd put the picture of this gentleman.
So this is a lady?
Yes.
She was pretending to be that gentleman?
That's what I can conclude now.
And they're not related?
As per now, I think they're not related. But that time it was his in-law.
And you had put this picture as your profile?
Yes.
Because this was
and
to be your husband?
And even him, he'd put mine. I sent him a photo and he put my photo on that number I was communicating to him.
So this was to be your husband, but...
Yes. After leaving Singapore, Qatar, and the rest of the trips.
But when you talk to him, he has never left Kenya. He had never left Kenya even before.
When I talked to that number, if the number I was told is the one they were using is photos from Facebook, from where? He said he's not left Kenya. Yeah.
So in total, how much did you lose?
2.8 M.
2.8 million shillings.
Yes.
You sent to your friend?
Yes, that friend of mine. Only one number.
And so the gentleman never appeared because he didn't exist?
No, the gentleman was not in the country. So there's no way I could send him money on M-Pesa. So the trustee was my friend. And I was told the only person I trust in the family is this friend who has told me a lot about you and I'm into you.
Speechless. And this is your friend?
Yes. A well-known friend to my brothers and sister.
What has it done to you? How has it done to your life?
It has messed me 100%. It has brought me down. Yeah.
Why did you decide to share this story with us?
Sometimes you decide to open up because you don't have a way out. It hurts me to hurt my friends. It hurts me to see my friends that I used to joke with. And I don't want to joke with them. The friends I would go to their house, we cook and eat. I can't do that anymore. It has brought a lot of enmity between me and my friends.
Sorry.
Like my neighbor who gave me money. We did the transaction in my bedroom. And I got to go to her place. She cooks, we eat, and she transacts the money. Now that cannot happen. I cannot even dare go next to her gate. And whenever we meet, we cannot even say hi. And it was never like that. The lady who gave me her title deed, she was a very good friend of mine. We could borrow things from each other. We could assist each other. Now, it hurts me so much.
So sorry.
So much. It has even made me shy from talking to my friends. I'm going into depression. And what hurts me more, one of my neighbors The son is a very good friend to my son. They stay together, they joke together. So when I look at them, I say, oh my God, sons are friends, mothers are enemies. Why could my friend do this? Why? I keep on asking myself when I'm in my lone bedroom and cry, say, why did I enter into this? But again, I thank God because he gave me a heart to assist. And because my friend took advantage of my heart and decided to con me, I don't know what I can do. And as we speak now, I might end up back in the cells because I don't have money to pay my neighbors. My neighbors need their money. I don't know where I can get money. For my first neighbor, the two neighbors, I need about 1 million to clear them. Because I have 2 cases now with them. There is one is in criminal court, and one they took to small claims court, and the judgment is coming up on 5th. If no money will be given by 5th, there will be a warrant of arrest, and I'll be arrested. And if I don't pay them the money by that time, I'll be taken into the cells, and then I'll be taken into remand again. So I don't know what happened between me and my friend, and why he just thought of conning me to satisfy her ego. Yeah.
So currently you need 1 million to be free?
Just, yes, to settle my friends. My brothers and my other friends, I can settle them up once the issue between me and my friend can be sorted by the court. Yeah.
Okay.
The issue is only the 1 million to settle my 2 neighbors. Yes. Just 1 million. If there is any Kenyan outside there who can assist me, I'll be very happy. And I'll always be grateful to him. And once this issue between me and my friend in court ends, and if there will be any money that will be paid, I can call back these people here under King Ori, and this name will be in the record, and the money can be given back to him. Only for me to settle my 2 neighbors. Yeah, only my 2 neighbors. Because I wouldn't like to end their marriages, because the 2 ladies gave me without involving their husbands. It was a woman's talk. So it hurts me to know that maybe my neighbors are being harassed by their husbands. And it was never my intention to hurt them. It was never my intention. I was doing it to help somebody who was in need. And they also gave me all-heartedly. So it will be very bad for me to know they're suffering because of the assistance they gave me. And this assistance was never meant to be what it was meant to be. My friend used a Cornish language to convince me to borrow money from them.
Yeah. I have 2 questions. Allow me to ask you these 2 questions.
Go ahead.
Did you know what she was doing with the money that you were sending to her?
From the word go, the money was to help the gentleman who was stuck in the foreign land to come back to the country. And the promise was the moment he lands in Jomo Kenyatta, he'll go to the bank and give me the money. That's why ile mtisho ilikuwa nisukuma ile roho ya kumsaidia.
Pesa itakuja.
Pesa itakuja. Pesa inakuja. So naona. So I could even go to the extent of coming to borrow my friend's money.
So up to now you don't know what she was doing with the money?
I can't tell. Yeah.
Did you tell her like you were desperate for a husband?
It was not desperation. I just told her that I'm growing old, and I need somebody whom I can own and have that title. Yes, as a friend. I would like to be called Mrs. You see? And I know where I come from, they normally say, ladies, we should be buried in our husband's place. So I jokingly told her that mimi ningelipenda kutafuta mahali penye kaburi langu litawekwa. No, jokingly. In my language, it sounds very interesting when you say in my language. So I told her, I'm looking where my grave will be. And for me to own the name of Mrs. Like that. So I don't know if she took that as a desperate. I was not desperate. Because I've survived all through. Yeah.
What is your message to the people that you owe money?
Well, what I can tell
your neighbors?
Especially my neighbors, whom I feel I've hurt so much. And I'm guilty about it. I'm not denying they gave me money. I'm very sorry. It's like my friend enjoyed me. He used my soft heart to mess me up and mess me, your relationship between you and me. But I assure you, one time is coming, we shall go back to our friendship. And the time is coming, I will give you your money. And we shall laugh again and have stories together. I'm very sorry for letting you down. It was never my intention. Because you know me, all the time we work together, we've been chatting and laughing. I never had any bad intentions towards my friends. And I'll never have anything against my friends. Yes, because I love them so much. Wamenijenga, wamenibeba. Na pia mimi njia yangu ilikuwa niwasaidie pia, ndio tukue na uhusiano mwema nao. Isipokuwa hii shida ilikuja kwa sababu ya rafiki yangu mwingine pia ambaye amenitapeli, lakini very soon things will be fine. Yes.
Finally, are you still open to love companionship as you grow older?
I'm hesitant to answer that because I've been hurt. Yes. And unless I get fully healed, I clear my friends, then I don't know, because age is not waiting for me. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Noel.
Thank you.
For your story, your testimony throughout that journey. It's not an easy journey to look forward to something like love and marriage, then end up to where you are.
Yeah.
So we pray for the very best.
Thank you.
That's what we can do for now. And we hope that you'll get away out of this mess that you're in.
Yes.
Yes.
I'll always keep in touch with you people, especially after 5th. I don't know what will happen after 5th.
5th of August.
Yes. Yeah, that's the termination of my 2 neighbors, and all they want is their money. Yeah. If no money, I think I'll be in remand. If you look for me one day, I'll be in Nakuru remand.
Probably we might not get up to that point.
That's my prayer.
What would you tell someone who is in your place? Because probably it is happening right now. A case like yours. Somebody knows that Kingori is looking for a wife and he can do anything to get this wife.
What I would like, try make sure you meet the person. And even if your friend is introducing you, insist on meeting the person face to face. And before you put yourself into that person 100%, know his people. Know his people. Because now I don't know where to turn to. Because I only knew my friend who has put me in this mess. Yes. If I'm told, everybody knows her. But now I don't know where the money went. Because she's the only person I knew and I was in touch with. This other party that was meant to come was to come through her. So she knows how she was playing her game. Yeah. So for anybody who has been told he wants somebody, I'm a living example. Don't buy that idea. Go into it to deeper yourself and get to meet this person, know his family, know his ways before you do anything. Yeah. To avoid such a mess I'm in. Yeah.
Our audience is varied. They are very diverse. Somebody is out there and say, hey, I can't give you the 1 million. Maybe we can partner in what you're doing. And then I get whatever we get as returns, then that money can come back to me. Are you open to that idea?
I'm open for an idea. The only thing is, and I want to say openly, I want to have peace with my friends and my 2 neighbors. Because if I make noise now, she's meant to come and help me, but she's just here. She cannot come. Because she says, this lady has messed me up. This lady wants to break my family. I don't want to break her family. No. My prayer is I settle her. And also the other lady who offered her title deed, I settled her. She might be having stress with the husband. But I wouldn't like that to happen. Because it was a loving family. And sitaki kuwa chanzo cha kukosana. Singependa hivyo kabisa.
You're right. How can people get in touch with you?
I have my number. Yes.
Are you willing to give it out?
I will give you the number. Because I want to be accountable for every cent, a Kenyan cent. Because of my carelessness, I'm not 100% accountable for what man I've borrowed. But now there's somebody who's willing to help me. And they're going to help me through this organization, through this team here. So I would like if anybody wants to help me, let them come through you. And then I'll again come out and give them a thanksgiving and say, yes, I got this money. I've got these names of people. I'll not mention them, but I'll talk to you as an individual.
Okay.
Yes.
Tuko family, that's the story of Noel. And in her testimony, all she wanted is to have a family. And by family, I mean a marriage for her company as she grows older. If you're there and you would like to hold her hand as she navigates these murky waters she finds herself in, Tuko family is here to facilitate that. That has been my story right here on Tuko. My name is Kingori Wangeshi. Thank you for watching.